Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
وقد دعت اللجنة التنفيذية لمنظمة تحرير اليوم حركة حماس إلى تعديل البرنامج السياسي.
The executive committee of the PLO held a meeting headed by Mahmoud Abbas to discuss the formation of the new government. A member of the PLO executive committee, Taysir Khalid, said that the committee demands Hamas to change its political platform. Khalid added that President Abbas will send a letter to the Prime Minister to demand that the new government must respect the Palestinian national consensus, because it is not acceptable for any government not to recognize the PLO as the only legitimate representative of the Palestinian people.
ممثلا شرعيا ووحيدا للشعب الفلسطيني.
Today is the second anniversary of the assassination of Sheikh Ahmed Yasin, the founder of the Hamas movement. The spokesman of the Hamas political bloc on the Palestinian Legislative Council, Representative Salah al-Bardouil, said that this date marks an important point in our struggle. Al-Bardouil said that Yasin was a true leader and a model of persistence and patience. Israeli Apache helicopters assassinated Sheikh Ahmed Yasin on the 22nd of March 2004 by launching 4 missiles at him and his companions while they were leaving a mosque after finishing the dawn prayers near his home in El Sabra neighborhood in Gaza. Amidst a recent Israeli incursion in the town of Jericho, a Palestinian activist from the Islamic Jihad was martyred and 2 others were detained. Meanwhile, the Israeli Occupation Authority continues to confine nearly 1,400,000 Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, which has been under Israeli siege for 3 consecutive weeks due to the closure of the Minter crossing. Hamas has confirmed that the Israeli occupation has no choice. All means and options are available unless Tel Aviv accepts Palestinian demands.
1 week has passed since Israel stormed the Jericho prison and seized Ahmed Saadat, the Secretary General for the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, and 100 other inmates. The Israeli occupation forces launched today another offensive military operation in Jericho. Amidst this escalation, one Islamic Jihad's activist has been assassinated after a 3-hour standoff with Israeli troops. For the 3rd consecutive week, Israel continues to confine 1,400,000 Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. The occupation government has claimed Gaza under siege by closing the Mintar crossing. The past Palestinian Prime Minister Ahmed Kurea described the siege in the Gaza Strip as a large detention center. Mr. Kurea accused the Israeli occupation of launching a war of starvation against the Palestinian people. According to hospital officials, there have been shortages in medicine and medical equipment due to the closure of the Mintar crossing. Moreover, there have been significant food shortages in the Gaza Strip. According to John Yang, the head of the United Nations Relief Work Agency, the UNRWA, in the Gaza Strip, the human suffering continues to worsen and deteriorate. This siege came in response to Hamas's firm position on Israel. Hamas refuses to recognize the Zionist entity and did not honor previous agreements between the Palestinian Authority and Tel Aviv. Amidst an escalation in the Israeli aggression, Hamas has reiterated its position and vowed to continue the resistance.
Armed struggle and all options of resisting the occupation are open to the Palestinian people. This is the Hamas new government's message to Israel. If Israel wants peace and stability, it must end the occupation and the aggression.
Hamas's position on the resistance was accompanied by calls to the Arab and Islamic worlds to support the movement as it represents the new government. Khalid Mish'al, the head of Hamas's political office, has visited recently a number of Arab and Islamic countries.
We are not isolated. We are a movement that won the confidence of its people. Hamas is capable of running Palestinian affairs. We succeeded in the past, and God willing, we will succeed in the present and the future. Whoever bets that Hamas will lose does not live in this world.
Hamas is still waiting on President Abbas's response regarding the new government. It seems that Hamas has recounted its previous decision of signing a long-lasting cooling-off period with the Israeli occupation. Once again, Hamas is speaking highly and loudly of the resistance.
The Israeli occupation forces have demolished a number of Palestinian houses in the town of Walaja near occupied Jerusalem. This news came amidst Israeli preparations for parliamentary elections. As the international community watches, the Israeli occupation continues its campaign of aggression against the Palestinian people.
As Israelis are gearing up for parliamentary elections at the end of the month, the occupation government is escalating its attacks and aggressions against Palestinians. A number of Israeli military vehicles and bulldozers headed towards the town of Walaja to carry out the demolition ordered by the Israeli Occupation Authority. Israeli bulldozers destroyed 2 houses belonging to Palestinian families under racially motivated reasons and justifications.
The day will come when God punishes the Israelis. All these houses belong to the town of Walaja, and they are not on Israeli land. The town of Walaja stretched beyond these mountains and streams. Don't the Israelis have enough land? Why did they come here? God damn them. Why did they demolish my house? It's not even a house. It's a hut. They just want to punish the Arabs. I ask God to punish them.
As local residents in Walaja came out to protest this demolition order, the Israeli occupation forces attacked them with batons and fired live ammunition and poison gas bombs at them, injuring a number of civilians. These unarmed residents came to defend their land and their human right for a better life. Meanwhile, the Israeli occupation is escalating its policy of aggression and suppression against Palestinians.
Why do the Israelis do these things? God forbids these bad deeds. They call us terrorists. They are the terrorists. They attacked us in our homes. We are not the terrorists.
It has been pointed out that the government of the Israeli occupation has subsidized a large general fund to demolish more than 150 houses. These homes belong to Palestinian families living in and around occupied Jerusalem. Kill one Palestinian, get one vote. Demolish a Palestinian house and steal from Palestinians, you get another vote. It seems that these are the slogans and campaign agendas of the Israeli political parties running in the upcoming parliamentary elections. Khader Shaheen, Al-Alam, the town of Walaja, occupied Jerusalem.
Key witness in the assassination of former Prime Minister Rafiq al-Hariri, Mohammed Zuhair al-Siddiq, will hold a news conference in Paris on Thursday. According to an article published in the Kuwaiti daily As-Siyasiyya, Siddiq will reveal valuable information about President Emil Lahoud and Syrian President Bashar al-Assad as to the killing of Hariri. Following his arrival in Doha, UN Special Envoy overseeing the implementation of Resolution 1559, Terry Rod Larsen, told reporters that UN Secretary General Kofi Annan had sent him to Qatar because it was the country representing the Arab region in the Security Council, and that it had always played an important role in the Middle East in exerting major efforts to help stabilize the region. Larsen already visited Saudi Arabia and Egypt as part of a regional tour and is expected in Jordan today. Larsen's last Middle East tour will be in Lebanon on Thursday. Information Minister Ghazi Al-Aridi held talks with Saudi King Abdullah bin Abdulaziz in Riyadh yesterday. Aridi discussed with his Saudi host the stances of the democratic gathering with its leader Walid Jumblat. Aridi also met Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Saud Al-Faisal and discussed bilateral relations. Syria has summoned former Vice President Abdel Halim Khaddam to appear in court. According to press notices, Khaddam and 24 other family members, including his wife Najat Markabi and their 3 sons and daughter, were called to appear in court in his hometown of Banyas in northwestern Syria on April 24. The notices did not give a reason for the summons, but Syrian press reports had said in January that Khaddam would be tried for high treason, investigated for corruption, and his assets seized. British Prime Minister Tony Blair called for a global interventionist approach to confront terrorism. In a speech given at the Reuters headquarters in London, Blair said the struggle against terrorism in London, Madrid, or Paris was the same as the terrorist acts of Hezbollah in Lebanon or the Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Palestine or rejectionist groups in Iraq. He added, when Iran gives support to such terrorism, it becomes part of the same battle with the same ideology at heart. Blair said nations must recognize that extremism was deeply rooted, with 40 to 50 countries subject to regular terrorist attacks loosely linked to its ideology, and that an interventionist stance was the precondition for future prosperity and stability. Both Russia and China objected the draft presented by France and Britain on Iran, as it practically prepared grounds for introducing sanctions on the Islamic Republic. Meanwhile, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, said yesterday that he approved of proposed talks between US and Iranian officials on Iraq, but warned that the United States must not try to bully Iran. The details with Yumna Tayyara.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Russia remains opposed to issuing Iran an ultimatum on its nuclear ambitions that involve sanctions. Lavrov reiterated Russia's opposition to a draft statement currently before the United Nations Security Council that would press Iran to suspend uranium enrichment and develop a broader strategy to deal with Tehran's nuclear program. Lavrov told reporters while in Beijing as part of a delegation accompanying President Vladimir Putin on a 2-day visit to China that the draft included formula that would practically prepare the ground for introducing sanctions against Iran, so it is unlikely that his country will support this draft as it is. The Security Council put off a scheduled meeting yesterday on the Iranian nuclear crisis to allow more work on the Franco-British statement to take into account Russian objections. Russia has repeatedly said the Iran nuclear crisis should be resolved within the UN nuclear watchdog, the International Atomic Energy Agency, effectively ruling out sanctions against Tehran. Lavrov said China, like Russia, a permanent member of the UN Security Council with veto-wielding power, shared the same position on this issue. Iran denied claims that it is seeking nuclear weapons and insists that as a signatory of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, it has a right to conduct uranium enrichment. On another note, Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said yesterday that he approved of proposed talks between US and Iranian officials on Iraq, but warned that the United States must not try to bully Iran. It was the first confirmation that Khamenei, who holds final say on all state matters in Iran, is in favor of the talks. Khamenei made those comments off camera, but spoke on state TV of the ongoing dispute with the US and other Western countries regarding the development of nuclear technology in Iran. Khamenei assured the Iranian people that the country would not bow to the pressure from the West.
The Secretary General for Hezbollah in Lebanon has cautioned Iraqis not to drift towards sectarian strife. He also confirmed that these sectarian conflicts are being fed. His comments were made in a speech given in a celebration commemorating the 40th anniversary of Imam al-Hussein in the southern district of the Lebanese capital.
Hezbollah has organized a central event honoring the 40th anniversary of Imam al-Hussein, peace be upon him. The Secretary General of Hezbollah, Mr. Hassan Nasrallah, gave a speech before thousands of participants. He cautioned Iraqis not to skid towards sectarian strife, confirming that some groups are behind it in order to sabotage the unity of the Iraqi people. He also called on Muslims to follow in the footsteps of the Imam Hussein and learn valuable lessons from his bravery and patience.
ذاك الجمع المليوني في كربلاء الذي يأتي زحفا مشيا على الأقدام.
I talked directly to the million people who marched today in Karbala. Men, women, children, disabled and sick, all came to Karbala. They walked the extra mile in defiance of the danger of killing, explosion, hunger, thirst, cold, and heat in order to honor our beloved Imam, Abu Abdallah al-Hussein, peace be upon him. Take a look at your television screens and you will not find any mention of al-Hussein. Where is al-Hussein? Where is the love of al-Hussein? And where is Yazid bin Muawiyah?
Mr. Nasrallah also commented on the Lebanese national dialogue, confirming that Hezbollah is still committed to articles of the National Unity Agreement signed in Beirut. He dismissed an allegation that Hezbollah has worked out a deal with the Lebanese Authority in order to keep its weapons in exchange for honoring the March 14th Committee's demands regarding the office of the president. He also confirmed that Israel still poses a threatened danger to Lebanon and its sovereignty, which makes it rather imperative to keep weapons in the hands of the resistance.
Do we have definite guarantees that our national water and border will not be subjected to the greed of the Israeli enemy? This requires a discussion. We live in an unstable region. In Palestine, the security situation is escalating as Palestinians are trying to combat heinous Israeli aggression and atrocities. We live in an area that witnesses deterioration and escalation.
Lebanese have celebrated the 40th anniversary of the death of Imam al-Hussein, may peace be upon him, in different parts of the country, including South and North Lebanon, Bekaa, and the southern district of Beirut. These festivities have proven that people value and honor this great occasion dearly. Honoring the 40th anniversary of the death of Imam al-Hussein did not only shed light on religious traditions and customs, but it was also an opportunity to highlight some of the political developments in Lebanon, the region, and the world. From the southern district of Beirut, Zina Abdulaziz, Al-Iraqiyya.
Viewer programming announcement. In addition to our regular newscast on Election Day, March 28th, IBA News will also have two special updates about the election. The first at 10:15 p.m. and the second news bulletin will be at 12:15 a.m. Well, just 6 days before Israelis go to the polls in the 17th Knesset elections, here to tell us what the candidates are up to in this final week is Leah Zinder at our election desk in Tel Aviv. Leah?
Yes, Yochanan, interesting that was about Henry Kissinger. In any case, with just 6 days to go, as you say, the name of the game, Yochanan, is watching the polls. No longer week by week, but day by day, even hour by hour. And today, they're showing a drop in support for Kadima. According to the Haaretz poll, Kadima now has just 36 Knesset seats. And here's the surprise, those seats aren't going to Labour or Likud. Labour is down as well with just 17 seats, and the Likud plummets to only 14 Knesset seats. So where are those voters going? Well, to the smaller parties, Shas, which gained 1, National Union NRP, which was up 1 as well, Meretz, which jumped 2 seats, Balad, and, here's a surprise, the Pensioners Party, the Gimlaim, that has crossed the threshold and, according to today's poll, will win 2 seats in the next Knesset. Well, let me just mention that in the Smith poll published in today's Jerusalem Post, Kadima has just between 34 and 35 seats, the Likud also has just 14, as in Haaretz, but Labour in the Jerusalem Post poll rises from 19 to 21 seats, so that's good news for them. Well, Yochanan, the dire situation of the Likud in the polls has driven party leader Benjamin Netanyahu to drastic action. Last night he launched his new strategy of appealing to former Likud stalwarts to come home by apologizing to them on television if they were harmed by his economic policies as finance minister. In fact, the desperation in the Likud is so intense that Likud Knesset member Moshe Kahlon is working on arranging a meeting between Netanyahu and the leader of the Bread Party, which is the movement representing the underprivileged and the homeless, a movement that staged interminable sit-down strikes against Netanyahu's policies. Kahlon is saying the leader of the Bread Party, Israel Twito, has agreed to join the Likud if he is promised the number 10 slot on their Knesset list. Netanyahu's sources are saying to IBA News today that will not happen. Legally, it's impossible, but they do confirm that Twito is ready to support the Likud. And Kadima leader Ehud Olmert made a rare public appearance last night. He was attending the launch of a new biography of Shimon Peres in Ramat Gan. Olmert was making a last-minute play for left-wing voters, I think, when he stood at Peres's side and said, "It's amazing to see how often Peres was always right when everyone thought he was wrong." Olmert also promised that Peres's best days are still ahead of him.
Despite the strict security measures taken by the Pakistani government to restore calm in the area of Miran Shah near the Afghani border, local residents continue to flee the war-torn region. Meanwhile, local tribal leaders have accused the Pakistani army of targeting civilians, mosques and schools. In light of this escalation, Pakistani opposition groups have criticized the Pakistani army for carrying out military operations in the region.
Dozens of Pakistani military convoys have surrounded and combed the town of Miran Shah, looking for armed groups. Amidst an escalation in the violence along the Afghani border, local residents and their children in the area of Miran Shah fled through the back roads. Nearly 200 people have been killed since clashes erupted at the beginning of this month. Local residents told tales about the war and the destruction left behind.
Our town was the target of continuous bombardment. As you can see, they destroyed these areas extensively. The mosque was heavily damaged. Our town was turned into a battlefield.
The Pakistani army, which staged checkpoints at the perimeters of Miran Shah, has allowed local residents to leave the area. Fearing for their lives, local residents used every means available to flee this war-torn region. A number of local residents assessed the damage.
The actual problem stems from President Pervez Musharraf's flawed policy. He takes pride that Pakistan is one of Washington's closest allies in the so-called war on terrorism. The Americans want to bring the Islamic world to its knees and control its capabilities. They have declared a war against the Islamic world. To form an alliance with the United States in this war is not acceptable for Muslims in Pakistan.
What local residents are facing in the region of Miran Shah is definitely a war. According to Pakistani analysts, if the war spirals out of control, it will not stop at the perimeters of these tribal and border areas. Many tribal leaders have called on Pakistanis to stop the violence and bloodshed. Pakistanis criticized their government for forming an alliance with the U.S. in the so-called war on terrorism. Hundreds of Pakistani civilians in tribal regions were killed in clashes with government forces. The administration of Pervez Musharraf finds itself in an awkward position after the United States has signed a strategic alliance with its rival, India. For Madar Program, Jamal Ismail, Abu Dhabi Channel, Islamabad.
To shed more light on this topic, we are joined from Cairo by Dr. Diya Rashwan, head of the Political Systems Unit at Al-Ahram Center for Strategic Studies and expert in Islamic Groups Affairs. The Miran Shah and two other tribal regions were not directly under the control of the central command of the Pakistani forces. Didn't the Pakistani government sign an agreement with these tribal rebels, demanding them not to harbor leaders of Al-Qaeda and the Taliban? And in return, the Pakistani government promised to improve the infrastructure of these tribal areas. However, Pakistan has bowed to American and Afghani pressure and used the military option to subdue these rebels. Do you think that Pervez Musharraf will continue his military campaign, or will he go back and honor previous agreements?
As you have mentioned, the Pakistani government was pressured by the United States. As we all know, President George Bush was in Afghanistan at the beginning of this month, and he talked with his Pakistani counterpart about Islamabad's role in the so-called war on terrorism. Pakistan and its security forces were the ones which helped militarily and financially the former Taliban regime. The Pakistani president is under a tremendous amount of pressure from the United States to root out the insurgents and bring these tribal areas under government control. In order to do so, the Pakistani government has launched a number of military operations along the Afghani border, breaching previous agreements with the tribes. Acting on a tip nearly 2 months ago that Ayman al-Zawahiri was in a hideout near the Afghani border, the American military forces and the FBI have carried out a number of offensive operations in these areas, killing several civilians. The Pakistani president is between a rock and a hard place. On one side, he's under tremendous amount of pressure from Washington, which he cannot afford to disappoint. On the other side, he is facing obstacles and mounting pressure at home. However, it seems that Washington's pressure on Musharraf, especially in the so-called war on terrorism, overweigh domestic outrage. The Saudi investor, Prince Al-Walid bin Talal, said that he expects that foreign capital will continue to pour into Syria, despite American attempts to isolate the country. This came during the prince's opening ceremony of the Four Seasons Hotel, 65% of which is owned by the Kingdom Hotel Investments Company of Prince Walid bin Talal. The hotel cost $100 million to build. From Damascus, a report by Tawfiq Yazji. Prince Al-Walid bin Talal confirmed the success of the Four Seasons in the experimental period during the past 3 months. Prince Walid called on Syrian investors to bring back their money from abroad, stressing the great investment environment in Syria.
This hotel, since it opened, is one of the best hotels in the Middle East. In terms of occupancy rates, it averaged over 80%. On average, hotels don't reach 60 to 70% capacity until they are open for 1 or 2 years. In contrast, this hotel reached 80% capacity in 3 months.
Al-Walid bin Talal is considered the most important owner of the hotel, owning 65%. The Syrian government owns 35%, which was represented by the Minister of Tourism and the Damascus district. Al-Walid bin Talal told President Bashar al-Assad that he supports Syria in the face of international pressure through this project, which is considered the most luxurious in Syria. The ownership is divided between Qabida Company and the Kingdom Hotel Investments Company, which raised its ownership to 49.5%.
Syria is now going through a difficult period. However, we are beginning to see the end of this stage. You cannot hold a whole population hostage based on one case, which has not even been decided yet.
The hotel has 297 rooms, 66 suites, 3 ballrooms and conference rooms. It is located in the center of Damascus. It will offer 600 jobs, 95% of which will be taken up by Syrians. The entire project cost nearly $100 million. The Higher Council for Tourism recently issued permits to construct hotels in Damascus, Tadmor, and Latakia, with the hope that this will lead to greater activity in tourism sector.
The views expressed on Mosaic are not those of Link TV or its sponsors, but of the broadcasters themselves. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin. This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. For a transcript of this program, to watch streaming video, or for instructions on how to receive Link TV in the United States, visit linktv.org.